Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We are so glad you're here with us today. On this edition of the Deep Dive, we are turning our attention to something that sits right at the precarious intersection of immense emotional vulnerability and just strict, unforgiving logistical pressure. We are talking about paper.
Paper. It sounds so mundane when you say it like that.
It does,
It
right?
sounds like office supplies.
I know, exactly. It sounds incredibly small. But specifically, we are talking about the funeral program. You know, that folded brochure or pamphlet you get when you walk into a memorial service. And I have to be honest, before digging into this research, I sort of viewed it as well a schedule, a purely...
Utilitarian.
Exactly, utilitarian. You know, here's the opening prayer, here's the eulogy, here's when we stand up, and here's when we go eat. But the material we are looking at today argues that this is actually a massive oversimplification.
It is a massive oversimplification.
Yeah.
And that is the trap a lot of people fall into. I mean, if you look at the research we have on memorial artifacts, it becomes clear very, very quickly that the funeral program is deceptive. It looks like a schedule, but it functions as a narrative artifact.
A narrative artifact. I really like that term. It gives it weight.
This is the perfect term for it. Because think about it. This is often the most enduring physical keepsake from a funeral. The flowers, they die within a week.
Right.
The food at the repast is eaten. The service itself is a moment in time. Unless it's recorded, it just sort of dissipates into memory. But the program, that piece of paper, is what people take home. It is the thing that leaves the room.
You know, I was actually walking through my house the other day doing that thing where you're looking for a battery or a roll of tape, and you end up opening that one drawer in the kitchen. You know the one, the junk drawer.
Oh, I know the one. The archaeology of the household.
Yeah,
Everyone has one.
Exactly. It's this timeline of miscellaneous life. And tucked in the back, between a dried-out superglue tube and a stack of takeout menus, I found a stack of them. Funeral programs. Some were from last year, some from 20 years ago. And it stopped me in my tracks. Because unlike the birthday cards or the wedding invites, which I honestly usually recycle after a few weeks, these stayed.
You'd throw them away.
I couldn't. It felt, I don't know, wrong, physically wrong, like I was throwing away a person.
And that feeling you're describing is exactly why the stakes are so surprisingly high here. We aren't just talking about graphic design. We are talking about families who are navigating immense grief. Arguably the worst week of their lives, being thrown into a world of high-pressure design decisions. They know, consciously or subconsciously, that they are creating something permanent.
Right.
And the core conflict we are unpacking today is the choice between two very distinct paths. Do you hire a professional design service, a turnkey solution, or do you brave the world of DIY templates and do it yourself?
And looking at the source material, it feels like a battle between two very different philosophies. One is about outsourcing for relief, and the other is about taking control for, well, maybe for therapy, or maybe just to save money.
Precisely. And our mission today is to really unpack those trade-offs. We want to look at the financial, emotional, and logistical implications of this choice. Because if you are listening to this, you might be in that position one day, or you might be having a friend who is. And understanding the why behind this decision can actually be a huge service to a grieving family.
So let's start by defining the artifact itself, because the source material points out that the funeral program has evolved. It's not just a list of hymns anymore. When did that shift happen?
It's been a gradual shift over the last, say, 30 years, and it was largely accelerated by the democratization of digital printing. Historically, yes, it was a utilitarian pamphlet. It was strictly liturgical. It was there to tell you what was happening so you didn't sit down when you were supposed to stand up. It was functional.
Right. It was an instruction manual for the service?
Exactly. But in contemporary memorial services, especially as we have moved from strict religious ceremonies to broader celebrations of life, the program has morphed into a thoughtfully designed piece of remembrance.
Okay.
It's expected to do some heavy lifting emotionally. It has become, well, like a little magazine.
Right. It's got photographs, biographical details, poems.
Oh, yeah. Scriptures, personal messages, acknowledgments, maybe a favorite recipe or a timeline of career achievements. It's a mini biography. It's a highlight reel of a life. The function has shifted from guiding the attendee to preserving the memory.
And because of that shift, the pressure for customization and quality has skyrocketed.
It really has. You can't just type it up on a typewriter and photocopy it anymore, or at least most people feel they can't.
And that connects back to that shelf life concept you mentioned. The sources emphasize that these aren't thrown away.
That is the critical distinctor. We call it the archive factor. You throw away a flyer for a pizza place. You throw away a political mailer. You don't throw away a funeral program, at least not easily. It feels disrespectful because it serves as a tangible expression of identity and legacy. So when a family is sitting down to make this, even if they don't articulate it, they feel that weight. They know they're creating something that will be revisited years later. They're entering the historical record of that family.
Which brings us to the environment in which this creation happens. This is the part of the research that I found really compelling, the emotional context. Because we are designing a birthday invitation here. We are designing under fire.
Decision-making under fire is the perfect way to put it. We have to talk about the grief brain.
Grief brain. I've heard this term thrown around, but break that down for us from a physiological perspective. Is it real?
It is deeply physiological. When you are in the acute stages of loss, which is exactly when you have to make these programs, usually in that 3 to 5 day window after death, your body is just flooded with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline.
Okay.
Your nervous system is in fight or flight mode. But simultaneously, you are often experiencing a depressive crash.
So you're wired and exhausted at the same time.
Exactly. You are sleep deprived, you are emotional, and you are depleted. But specifically, the part of the brain that takes the biggest hit is the prefrontal cortex. That's your CEO. That is the part responsible for executive function. Planning, organizing, logical sequencing, and attention to detail.
All the things you need to design a complex document.
All the things you need to design a document. That is the cruel irony of the situation. You are medically and psychologically least capable of complex logistical tasks at the exact moment you are required to perform them.
So minor tasks like choosing a font or aligning a photo so it isn't crooked or figuring out why the printer margin is cutting off a word, those things aren't just annoying.
They are insurmountable. They feel like mountains. The research compares it to trying to solve algebra equations while running a marathon with a 50-pound backpack. You might be able to do it, but the cost, the physical and mental toll, is astronomical.
Wow. So the central question we have to keep coming back to is, how does the method of creating this program interact with that grief? Is the process of making it a burden that breaks you, or is it a therapy that heals you? And the answer isn't the same for everyone.
No, it isn't. Not at all. And that is why we have these two distinct paths.
Okay, so with that emotional backdrop set, the fog of war, so to speak, let's dive into the first big option, professional design services. The sources describe this as the turnkey solution.
Right. So think of organizations like the funeral program site. These are specialized providers. They aren't just a local print shop down the street that mostly does business cards and restaurant menus. They specialize in memorial materials.
So what does turnkey actually mean in this context? Because I usually hear that in real estate.
It implies a complete handover of responsibility. It means they take the keys and drive the car for you. The scope typically includes consultation, custom layout design, photo enhancement, which is huge, by the way.
I can imagine.
Text formatting, proofreading, and then the actual printing and delivery.
So you hand them the raw materials, the messy stack of photos, the word doc with the obituary that probably has 3 typos, the list of pallbearers, and they hand you back a finished product.
Exactly. And the primary goal of these organizations is to support the family by ensuring accuracy and polish without the family having to sweat the technical details.
Let's look at the advantages here. The first one listed is reduced cognitive and emotional burden. This goes back to that grief brain concept we just discussed.
It does. And this is where the concept of micro decisions comes in. If you are doing this yourself, you have to make hundreds of tiny decisions. What size is the header? Is this centered? Is the spacing between these paragraphs even? Which blue matches Dad's eyes better? Should this be bold or italic?
And normally those are annoying questions.
Yeah.
But when you are grieving, they are paralyzing.
They are. They drain your battery. When you hire a professional service, you delegate those micro decisions. You are buying back your own mental bandwidth.
Oh.
The value here is that it frees the family to focus on emotional presence. It allows you to focus on coordinating with relatives or just sitting with your feelings rather than screaming at a computer screen because the text box won't move.
That feels like a massive selling point, just buying yourself space to breathe. But there is also the quality aspect, advantage number 2, expertise and aesthetic quality. I want to push on this. Is a pro really that much better than a tech-savvy nephew with Canva?
It depends on the nephew, but usually, yes. And here is why. Functional design. It's not just about making it look pretty, it's about readability. Professional designers understand visual hierarchy. They know how to guide the eye across the page. But here is a practical application I hadn't considered until I read the source material. readability in low-light environments.
Oh, wow. I didn't think of that either.
Think about where a funeral happens. A dim church with stained glass, a softly lit funeral home.
And who is the audience?
Often older relatives with failing eyesight.
Or reading through tear-filled eyes.
Exactly. A professional designer knows, instinctively, I cannot put light gray text on a white background in 10-point font. It will disappear. They know they need high contrast. They know they need a serif font that is legible at 12 points. A DIY amateur often picks what looks pretty on a bright backlit computer monitor, not realizing it will be illegible in the church.
That is a detail you would absolutely miss if you were just grabbing a template online at 2 a.m. You're looking at a screen, not paper.
100%.
Okay.
The difference between screen and print is massive. And then there is the photo handling. This is a big one. Families often have old photo scans of Polaroids, low-resolution Facebook downloads, pictures where the lighting is bad.
Or where the deceased is standing next to someone they divorced 20 years ago.
Right. A professional knows how to handle that. They perform restoration and enhancement. They can color correct. They can remove the background distractions. But more importantly, they understand resolution. They know that a photo that looks okay on your phone screen might look like Minecraft blocks, pixelated and blurry when printed on cardstock.
I can see that. Nothing takes you out of the moment, like looking at a program and seeing a pixelated, blurry face of the person you love. It feels cheap.
It feels jarring.
Yeah.
It can feel like you didn't care enough, even though you just didn't have the technical skills. A professional ensures the visual representation is dignified.
And what about the logistics? We talked about the timeline pressure.
Advantage number 3, logistics and integration. Time efficiency is key here. Funeral timelines are compressed. You often have 3 to 5 days between the death and the service. Professionals have established workflows for this. They're used to the, I need this by Thursday phone call.
So they aren't panicked by the deadline.
No, it's their Tuesday. They live in that deadline. And because many of these services, like the funeral program site, handle both design and printing, you get integration. You eliminate the risk of paper incompatibility.
What does that mean? Paper incompatibility.
It means designing a beautiful brochure on your computer, buying fancy, heavy cardstock because you want it to feel premium, and then finding out your home printer can't feed that thickness of paper without jamming every 3 sheets.
Oh, no.
When you go pro, that risk is gone. The person designing it knows exactly what machine is printing it. They know the margins. They know the bleed lines.
Okay, so that sounds like a dream. Why wouldn't everyone just do that?
Well, there are limitations, the barriers,
The big one being money.
the financial barrier. It is an additional expense.
Yeah.
And funerals are already shockingly expensive. Caskets, plots, embalming, services, flowers, food. We are talking thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. For some families, dropping a few $100s or more on programs is just not feasible. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right. And then there's the control aspect, the perceived loss of control.
This is subtle, but important. Some people worry that outsourcing distances them from the personalization. Does it feel less intimate to have a stranger lay out the photos of your mother? For some, the answer is yes. They want their fingerprints on it. Nobody knows him like I do. How can a stranger lay out his life?
And I imagine for control-oriented people, people who cope by managing details, the dependency on a third party could be stressful.
Absolutely. Dependency is the third limitation.
Right.
You are relying on external timelines. You are waiting for an email proof. If there is a communication delay or if the shop is closed for the night, you are sitting there waiting. If you are doing it yourself, you have agency. You can work until 4 a.m. if you want to.
Which is the perfect segue to our next deep dive, the DIY funeral program templates. This is the other side of the coin. The sources call this the rise of the citizen designer.
It's really been driven by technology. Better home printers, better word processing software, and the internet. 20 years ago, DIY meant scissors and glue. Now it means Word, Publisher, Canva, or Photoshop.
The typical scenario painted here is so vivid. A family member, late at night, finding a template online during a quiet moment.
It's 1 a.m. The house is finally quiet after a day of chaotic planning. You can't sleep. You feel helpless. So you open your laptop and say, I can do this. I can make something beautiful for them.
Let's look at the advantages of this route. Obviously, number one is accessibility and cost.
It's significantly more affordable. Some templates are free. Some are a modest download fee, like $10 or $20. If the budget is tight, this is the lifeline.
And immediacy.
Right. No business hours. You can start now. You don't have to wait for a consultation. That agency is powerful.
But then we get to the psychological argument for DIY. creative control in therapy.
This is the therapeutic engagement argument,
Right.
and it is valid. The
But
sources are clear on this. For some people, engaging with the photos, cropping them, placing them, typing out the poems, is a quiet ritual of remembrance.
it's a way to process the loss actively.
Exactly. You're spending time with the memory of the person.
Yeah.
You're literally building their story with your hands or, your mouse. It can be a very loving, very tearful, but very healing process. It serves as a way to say goodbye. It's a digital vigil.
A digital vigil. That's beautiful, but,
Yeah.
and there's a big but here. The source calls it the technological trap.
The trap. Because what starts as therapy can very quickly become a nightmare. We have to talk about the risks of DIY.
Let's list the horrors.
Emotional overload is the first one. Remember grief brain. You might start feeling therapeutic, but 10 minutes in, when the text box won't align, that therapy turns into rage or despair. Your concentration is impaired. Your fuse is short.
And then the specific technical challenges. The sources list some classics.
Let's start with margins. Most home printers cannot print full bleed.
Define full bleed for us.
Full bleed is when the image or color goes all the way to the edge of the paper, with no white border. Professional printers print on oversized paper and then slice the edges off. Home printers can't do that. So you design this beautiful background that goes to the edge, you hit print, and suddenly there's a weird, uneven white border around everything. It looks amateur immediately.
That is maddening.
Then there is color discrepancy. Monitors use RGB red, green, blue light. Printers use CMYK cyan, magenta, yellow, black ink. The spectrums are different. You see a vibrant electric neon blue on your screen. You print it, and it comes out as a muddy, dull purple. You can't fix that unless you know color theory,
And the dreaded paper jam.
the sound of doom. You bought expensive heavy cardstock because you wanted it to feel premium. But your $100 inkjet printer's rollers aren't strong enough to pull that weight, so it jams every single sheet.
And remember, you're doing this the night before the funeral.
You are exhausted. You are crying. And now you are covered in toner, fighting with a machine, and you only have 10 sheets of expensive paper left. This is where therapeutic engagement turns into emotional overload.
And the result is quality variability.
Exactly. The result depends entirely on your skill and your home equipment. You might be a great designer, but if your printer runs out of cyan ink halfway through, you're in trouble. The output can range from polished to visibly rushed or flawed. Or you get the classic folding error. You put 100 of them, and then you realize the crease goes right through the deceased's face.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is, and it's distracting.
So we have these two paths. The professional polished, easier but expensive and detached. The DIY personal, cheap but risky, and potentially overwhelming. How do you choose? This brings us to the critical analysis.
We have to weigh the trade-offs, and the source material offers a really brilliant equation here. Cost versus emotional energy.
Let's unpack that equation.
The expert's aha moment is this. This decision isn't just about money. It's about recognizing that emotional energy is a finite resource. You only have so much in the tank during funeral week.
So the trade-off is defined as
Professional services equal a financial investment for emotional relief. You are paying cash to save your sanity. You are buying peace.
and DIY.
DIY equals a financial savings for an emotional and cognitive investment. You are saving cash, but you are spending your brain power and your emotional stamina.
That is such a clear way to see it. It frames the money not as a fee, but as an investment. So the pivotal question families have to ask isn't just, can we afford $300? It's, what can we emotionally manage right now?
Exactly. Do I have the bandwidth to fight with a printer tonight? If the answer is no, then that money for a professional might be the best money you spend that week. It's the cheapest therapy you will find.
There are also cultural and family dynamics to consider here.
Yes. Some communities have very specific visual or textual requirements. Some religious traditions have specific prayer formats or iconography. In many African American traditions, for example, the obituary section is extremely detailed, a true historical record, and the layout is often expected to be quite elaborate.
Right.
Professionals who specialize in this, like the funeral program site, are often well-versed in these cultural nuances. They know what goes where. If you are DIYing it and you don't know the traditions, you might make a faux pas.
And then there is the too many cooks problem. I feel like every family has this potential.
Oh, absolutely. The committee approach. In families with multiple decision-makers, siblings, spouses, parents, DIY can be a battleground. I don't like that font. Why did you choose that picture of mom? She looks tired. That blue is too bright.
And suddenly the person at the computer is the punching bag.
They become the bottleneck for everyone's grief. In this case, the professional acts as a neutral facilitator. A designer takes all the input and produces a single, cohesive design. It bypasses the argument. You can blame the designer if you don't like it, but you aren't fighting with your sister.
That is a hidden value I hadn't thought of. Peacekeeper.
It preserves relationships. That is huge.
Now, is there a middle ground? We seem to be painting this as binary, but the source mentions a hybrid approach.
Yes, and this is becoming very popular. Professionally designed templates.
How does that work?
It bridges the gap. You get a professional structure, the layout, the typography, the background art are all done by a pro. It looks high-end. But the user inputs the content.
So you aren't starting from a blank page.
No. You are just filling in the blanks.
Mhm.
It's paint by numbers versus painting on a blank canvas. It reduces the technical layout challenges. You don't have to design the page, but you preserve the sense of personal involvement and speed. You can still do it at midnight, but you're doing it with a safety net.
That sounds like a smart compromise.
It is. It balances the need for quality with the need for agency.
We also need to talk about the long-term perspective. Because, as we established at the start with the junk drawer story, this isn't a flyer, it's a keepsake.
Minimizing regret. That's the long-term goal. The source calls it the time capsule aspect. What feels good enough during the rush might be viewed differently in 5 years.
Meaning you might look back at that DIY program you rushed out and notice all the typos?
You might. Or you might look at it and just see the love you put into it. But families often reflect on whether the program captured the essence of the loved one. Did it feel like them? But here is a counterintuitive point on regret. You might regret a typo on a DIY program, but you will regret more if the stress of making that program stole your last moments of peace.
Wow, that hits hard.
Yeah.
Did the process steal your presence?
That is the danger. If you were so busy folding pamphlets in the church basement that you missed the chance to hug your aunt, or you missed the chance to just sit by the casket and say goodbye, that is a regret that sticks. So when we talk about minimizing regret, sometimes it's about prioritizing your own time over the artifact itself.
So let's get practical. The source provides a checklist, a decision matrix for the listener. If you are facing this choice, what should you ask yourself?
Okay, let's run through the questions. Number 1, how much emotional energy do we realistically have? Be honest, not what you want to have. What do you have? Are you running on fumes?
Number 2, are there strict time constraints preventing troubleshooting?
If the funeral is tomorrow morning, do not start a complex DIY project tonight. The learning curve will eat you alive.
Number 3, do we have reliable equipment?
This is the hardware check. Do not trust a 10-year-old inkjet printer with the most important document of the year. If you don't have the gear, don't do the job.
And number 4, will this feel healing or overwhelming?
That is the gut check. Close your eyes. Imagine sitting at the computer moving photos around. Does that image make you feel a sense of quiet connection? Or does it make your chest tight with panic? Listen to your body.
And finally, consider the role of specialists.
Providers like the funeral program site aren't just printers, they are trusted specialists. They understand the intersection of grief and logistics. They are part of the support system, just like the funeral director or the florist. Lean on them. That is what they are there for.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize the mission here.
The mission is clarity and validation. There is no universally correct answer. Professional design offers expertise and relief, but it costs money. DIY offers control and savings, but it demands stamina and skill.
It's not that one is better than the other.
No, it is about empowerment through choice. The ultimate goal isn't the perfect program. There is no such thing. The goal is a decision that supports healing. Empowerment comes from respecting your own limits during grief. If you can't do it, don't. That is an act of self-love.
I love that. Respecting your own limits is an act of self-love, especially in grief.
It's the kindest thing you can do for yourself in that moment.
And here's a final provocative thought for our listeners to take away.
It's about intention. Whether it is made by a high-end design firm or by a granddaughter with a glue stick, the most meaningful programs are defined by the intention behind them. I want you to think about the nature of these artifacts. They reflect not only the life lived, but the care with which it is remembered. And it makes you think. When the time comes, how would you want your own story told? And more importantly, who would you trust to lay out the pages of your life?
That is a powerful, heavy question to leave on. Thank you for listening to this deep dive on the Funeral Channel Network. We hope this conversation helps you navigate these tough choices with a little more grace and understanding.
Goodbye.
Take care of yourselves.